If you want to have a license to print money, and I'm talking about doing it in a way where it feels effortless, well then, my friends, you have made it to the right video. I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs scale to 7 and even 8 figures plus, and what I've found is they all make this one key critical mistake that, quite frankly, they don't even know they are making. That's the crazy part about this. And I would be willing to bet, if I was a betting man, that you're making this mistake too. And after making over $30 million online, what I found is all of my biggest seasons of growth have come after mastering this one thing. And so in this video, I'm not only going to break down what that one thing is, but more importantly, how to leverage it to be able to literally double your business overnight. Okay. So I know you're probably wondering, Sergio, what is this one mistake? And I'm referring to not intimately understanding what is your ratio between cost per acquisition and lifetime value, or LTV. And look, I know that it is not a sexy topic. Trust me, I get it. It's not as sexy as this crazy new marketing tactic or this one script that can increase your closing percentage by 10x or whatever the heck. But it is the one thing in business that if you get right, you are laying a foundation of future growth like nothing before. I truly believe that it's the one metric that allows you to control how much money you actually keep. And let's be frank, making money is cute, but keeping money is significantly better. So look, I would argue that most people can get their cost per acquisition pretty quickly. And if you don't know, here's the simple math, the simple formula to be able to figure that out in literally probably 30 seconds. So what you're gonna do is take all of the money that you spend on every single form of advertising, and ideally, by the way, you break this down by channel. So you break it down by Meta, Instagram, YouTube, direct mail, outbound, whatever you're doing. But for the sake of this video, let's just assume you're only spending money on ads, just to keep it simple. You can take down all of the amount of money you're spending on ads, and you're gonna divide it by the total, monthly by the way, and you're gonna divide it by the total number of clients that you're gonna close that month. And so let's say I spend, just to use some simple math, let's say I spend $10,000. Woo, I closed 10 clients that month. Awesome. That means that my acquisition cost is a whopping $1,000. Okay, this is your cost per acquisition. Don't judge the writing. But at that point, that's your acquisition cost. You spent $10,000 on Meta, you closed 10 clients, you have an acquisition cost of $1,000. Here's what most people think their LTV actually is. They're like, hey, let's say the same 10 clients I talked about. Cool, we have 10 clients. Let's say they stay with us for a whopping 6 months. Congrats, you have clients that have stayed with you for 6 whole months. And let's say they're paying you $1,000 a month each. You don't have to be a mathematician to know that at that point, every client over the course of 6 months, they're paying you a whopping $6,000. And now most people would think this is their LTV. And then they deduct what they paid to acquire that client, which in the example we talked about earlier was $1,000. And they're like, okay, cool. That means my profit here in this example is $5,000. And they're like, Sergio, I'm rich. I'm turning 1,000 into 5,000 every single time. And I'm like, hey, slow down there, buddy. There's some simple math that you're missing that's literally killing your business. So let's see what your actual LTV is. Let's take that same 6,000. They're going to pay you over the course of 6 months. And there's a few different things you have to deduct here to get your true LTV. So you're going to have naturally your commission for your sales rep. Let's say that's pretty standard for you to pay 10%. So they're over the course of 6 months making $600. Okay, cool. It's a pretty good close. Awesome. Now you're also going to have your account manager, client success, your support team. And let's say you're paying them $4,500 a month, which is pretty standard. Okay, awesome, no problem. And they're managing the exact same 10 clients that we talked about in this example. So that means that per client, you're actually paying $450 per month. Hopefully you're following this math. I was never that good at math in school, but this is simple math that I could actually follow. Hopefully you can follow along. I think you definitely can, because I'm an idiot. If I can follow along, you probably can too. And so now we have, or 450 times the same 6 months that clients are staying with you. And I think that is a total of $2,700. Now you add that with the $600 that you paid the closer, and you are at a whopping $3,300, if my math serves me right, that you're deducting from what you believed to be your true profit. And this doesn't account for taxes, which might be 40, 50%, depending on the state you're living in. This doesn't account for the software or any other operational costs that you're naturally going to have in literally every single business. And so really what you're doing is taking the 5K that you previously had, and you're deducting $3,300. And this is, again, before taxes, before operational costs, before anything else in the business. This is just you keeping it as lean as possible. And you're also not paying Uncle Sam his share, which bad you if you're doing that. You should absolutely be paying the IRS, even though I try every single year to pay as little to the IRS. But we're all going to have to do our share. Anyway, so at that point, if my math serves me right, I think that's like, what's that? 1,700? Yep, 1,700. Okay, cool. So this is your actual profit. Again, before paying anything else. And so really what you're doing is you're turning $1,000 that you're spending on ads into $1,700. This is actually your profit. And so at the end of the year, you've closed hundreds of clients if you keep this pace, at least 100, and you are servicing these clients, you're delivering for them, and then you realize, oh crap, I've pretty much been running a nonprofit at the end of the year because my margins are nothing. I've made absolutely no money. And then you come to me and you say, hey, Sergio, I don't understand why I'm making no money. And I'll tell you, it's because you didn't do the simple math necessary to be able to win in business. But don't worry, because I've got you. I'm going to show you in about 5 minutes how you can fix this ratio to unfuck your business. Now, before I do, let me first address why this matters to begin with. Now, let me give you a live example here. Take Crumble Cookie. And I'm giving loose numbers, by the way, because I don't actually know Crumble Cookie's profits. I don't know their acquisition costs. I don't know their LTV, but I'm just giving some loose examples here, okay? What separates Crumble Cookie from your average cookie shop? I would argue that there are some cookie shops out there that may even have better cookies in terms of taste, at least, from Crumble Cookie. And then why is it that they're struggling to make rent every single month and you have Crumble Cookie who's scaling exponentially? What separates Crumble Cookie from your local average cookie shop? Well, I'd argue because Crumble Cookie rolls out new cookies or flavors, whatever, like, I don't know, every week or something, that they're going to get a lot of repeat business. You're going to come in and say, what's the flavor of this week? And so what happens is naturally their lifetime value, their repeat customers, their repeat business is going to be exponentially higher than your local cookie shop where you might go once a month when you're having your cheat day or something. And so whereas your average cookie shop might have a acquisition cost to LTV ratio of, I don't know, don't quote me on this, I'm just making these numbers up, but let's say 1/5, Crumble Cookie might have that same ratio at 1/50. Now, why does this matter? This means not only can Crumble Cookie spend 10 times as much to acquire the very same customer that, let's be quite frank, they're going to be competing with in any geographical area, the local shop and Crumble Cookie, but most importantly, they're going to have so much more buffer, so much more wiggle room from a profit standpoint because their LTV is significantly higher to invest, to have the best cooks and come in and test out new flavors or create new flavors, to rent in the best, most premium locations to attract ideal customers coming in. They're going to be able to spend more to, again, acquire a customer. They're going to be able to reinvest more into their brand, to have this perception that they're a better cookie than your local shop when that might not even be the case. But what's fascinating is it's fundamentally the exact same business, just a cookie shop, but one leveraged having a significantly higher LTV to be able to separate themselves and have a massive gap between them and your average mom and pop cookie store down the road. But it goes to show how simply changing and tweaking the financial model inside of a business can drastically change the economics and allow you to quite literally dominate where other people are struggling to get by. Now, this begs the question, if that's the case. So should I lower my cost per acquisition or should I increase my LTV? And if so, how do I do either or? And those are all great questions. And so let me address this with a quick little story. Back when I had my marketing agency, I actually was that guy initially with about a 500-ish acquisition cost and only in the early days, at least, an LTV of about $5,000, right? And so I knew I had to solve this problem, really the cost per acquisition to LTV ratio. And I should have absolutely focused more on increasing LTV as opposed to decreasing the cost per acquisition. But I did want to give you a quick little hack and ways that I lowered my acquisition cost. So any given month, my agency would spend 20, 30, 40, 50K a month, and we'd bring in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 clients a month. Sounds crazy, but this is the numbers that we would do. And so our acquisition costs would range, again, somewhere between that $500 mark to $1,000. But given the fact that clients would only stay for a couple months, I knew I had to solve this problem. And so I called my sales team in because we were closing at a great rate. I great at training sales teams. I knew I could get them to close at 30, 40, 50%, but we had all these appointments coming in. I couldn't figure out why the heck we're only closing 20, 30, 40, 50 clients. And what I found out after doing some digging is about 80% of the applications that we would receive, and consequently 80% of the calls that were booked, were actually DQs. And so this means that 80% of my budget would go to shit. I would spend 50K and probably only truly get 10K worth of that. And so I told my sales team, I was like, okay, well, what if instead of just getting DQs and telling them, hey, unfortunately, we can't work with you, what if we found something else to sell them with the goal of only liquidating the ad spend? And so if I spent $20,000 that month, I wanted to downsell $20,000 worth of something that didn't take up a lot of time, that wasn't part of our core offer, just to offset our acquisition cost. And so for you mathematicians out there, if you spend 50K and you make back 50K worth of some sort of downsell, which I'll get to some downsell examples here in a second, and you still also close 20, 30, 40, 50 clients of your core offer, well, then your acquisition cost is a whopping $0. And so what I told my sales team is, why don't we downsell clients a do-it-yourself coaching call or a do-it-yourself course that broke down exactly what we do for our existing clients on our premium core offer, and we would just consult and coach them on how to do it. Now, this is a low touch point delivery. They would just get access to a course and maybe like a quick little onboarding call that walked them through things. So it didn't require a lot of our time. It was high margins, but again, it allowed us to have quite literally an infinite budget. Because if my acquisition cost was $0, well, then I could spend more than anyone else to be able to acquire that customer. And as you guys know, whoever's willing to spend the most to acquire a customer is going to win. But if my acquisition cost is $0, then I'm going to beat everyone in the market. And this is exactly how I did. And so, quick little hack on that before I dive into LTV. I told my sales team, whatever they downsold the previous month would be the budget that I would allocate for them personally the following month in terms of appointments. Now, this incentivized them to make sure they actually downsold all the DQs. And so tactically, what did this look like? So our core offer was somewhere in the range of $2,500 to $3K. But again, most people couldn't afford that. And so I told my sales team, why don't you just downsell a course anywhere from $1,500 to $1.5K, and it's a one-time sale. It's automated. They get a login, and maybe if they paid this, they would get a quick little 15-minute, 20-minute onboarding call with one of our team members just to make sure they got access and all this stuff. And my closers, let's say they would sell 20 of these at 1K. This would now become his budget for the following month. And so my closers were incentivized to downsell these to be able to get more qualified prospects the following month. Now, again, I could do an entire series, honestly, on multiple different ways to lower your acquisition costs with low ticket products, with webinars and all this stuff. I could get into this, but I'd rather actually just focus on what's more important, because despite the fact that I had zeroed my acquisition cost, I can tell you right now, confidently, it was not as effective in terms of business growth as when I decided to put all of my energy and focus on LTV. And so if you have to solve just one problem inside of your business and you were debating between lowering your acquisition cost and increasing your LTV, I'm gonna choose solving this problem all day long, the problem of increasing my LTV. And here's the reason why. So at best, your acquisition cost can go down to 0. Whereas your LTV, this can be infinite. I want to scaling my LTV 4 times as much as it was initially by simply doing a couple little tweaks in terms of pricing and upsells and extra client success and all this sort of stuff. And so because of that, my business wound up blowing up even more so than the days that I had zero my acquisition cost. And so with that being said, that becomes the right question for you to ask. How do I increase my LTV? And that, my friends, is what I'm going to be diving into next. It starts with what I call the 4-dimensional walls of LTV. Okay, so let me break this down. If you think of a 4-dimensional cube, if you guys thought my writing was bad, imagine my drawing. So this is a 4-dimensional cube. At least I would like to think so. I think it looks quite cute. It works for me. You have 4 different components, and I'm gonna break them down one by one. So the very first one is increasing your price. Now, here's the thing when you increase price. Most people are afraid to increase their price because they think they're gonna start closing less. And what I would recommend you do is just on your very next conversation, your very next prospect call, increase your price by 10%. And I promise you, your very next close won't bat an eye. If 10% the difference maker between someone buying your product or not buying your product, well, then you probably don't have a good product, because no one bats an eye at an extra $100 on a $1,000 product. And so, my recommendation is every 60 to 90 days, you increase your price by 10, somewhere in the range of 10 to 20%. And you're probably going to say, but Sergio, you can't do this forever. You can't just increase your price forever. And you're right. There's going to be a ratio. It's like the golden ratio between your close rate, because your close rate at a certain point is going to take a hit relative to your price. So there is a ratio here. But with that being said, a 5% drop on your close rate when you've increased your price by 10, 20, 30%, even if you have a 5% drop on your close rate, but your price is increased by 20%, you're actually going to want to make more net. So don't just look at your close rate as the leading indicator as to whether or not the thing you're offering is working. You have to look at the whole thing. It's your close rate to price ratio. And so, again, what I would recommend is every 60, 90 days, you just take the time and you increase your price by 10 to 20%. And then here's the thing, and this is probably one of the biggest golden tips I can give you. The moment that your close rate begins to drop past that point where it just doesn't make sense after you've done the little equation, net cash collected total for the month relative to close rate, well, then you have to ask yourself, how the heck could I increase the value of what I'm offering as opposed to decreasing my price further? And so at that point, I would rather increase the value, or at least the perceived value in what I'm offering. Ideally, you actually genuinely increase the value, and then keep your price stagnant for another 60, 90 days. And then you do the same process all over again, where you raise your prices every, 60 to 90 days, et cetera, by 10%. So that's the first part of the 4-dimensional walls, which is increasing your price. This one, a lot of people can conceptualize. They understand that one pretty simply. The next one is upselling clients. I'll tell you guys right now, it's easier to sell someone you've already sold versus going off and getting new clients. Now, I recommend you go off and get new clients, but it's going to be significantly easier for you to upsell clients that you've already worked with on something else. Now, my favorite way to do this is to solve the next problem that your front end offer created. So let me give you some context on this. Back when I was running a consulting business, I would teach people how to generate appointments on the front end, craft offers, fix their ad copy, the funnels, all of the things on the marketing side that would help them get far more appointments they could even imagine possible, right? And then we'd also help them on the sales side. We teach them the scripts, the processes, the frameworks, how to build out sales team to scale to multiple 8 figures and all this crazy stuff. And our clients got so good at their front end that it now puts stress on their back end, the operations, the systems, the team building, the client success, and all these things. This initial problem was solved with our front end offer. Hey, we're going to help you solve this, and that on the front end. And then it created a different problem now on the back end, because they're getting all these clients. They're going to need help fulfilling on these clients, systemizing the back end, building on a team, a leadership team, the operations of the business, etc. It's the same sort of philosophy that I'm trying to convey here. And again, this is my favorite way to do this because it is the natural progression to keep the clients with you for as long as possible. If you continue to solve your client's next problem, then they're with you for life. And so the easiest way to do this is to reach out to your happy clients. I guarantee you, whether you only have 5 clients, whether you have 500 clients, you have a handful of clients that are happy, that are getting results, that are excited with continuing to work with you, etc. What I would recommend is reach out to your happiest clients and ask them, hey, how are things going? What's working? What's not working? What could be improved? What are some of the challenges you're now dealing with that you didn't foresee having when we first started working together? And then here's a wild idea. Solve that problem for them for free. Now look, I know you want to get paid, but the reality is that one case study of a client that you upsold and solved their next problem is going to be worth far more than a couple $1,000 they're going to pay you to do so. And so that's the simplest way to get this thing done. With that being said, just to kind of bring us back to speed, the 4-dimensional walls of LTV, obviously we have increased price, we have upsells, which we just covered. By the way, on upsells, try to charge 2 times as much as your front end offer. Increase your price by 2 times on the next problem you're going to solve. It's going to be worth twice the amount for them to solve it. Now, the third wall of the 4-dimensional wall of LTV is cross sells. This one's kind of self-explanatory. It's, hey, you just bought a burger. Let me upsell you fries. Hey, you just bought some fries. Let me upsell you soda. That's cross sells. Now, the last one here is not really my favorite, but I have to talk about it. I've absolutely done it. And it's to lower the cost of delivery. Now, why does this lower your LTV? Well, if clients spend with you 10K and the cost for you to deliver is, just throwing a random number out there, is 3K, well, then your true LTV is 7,000. But if clients spend the same 10K with you, but your cost to deliver on that service or product that you promised the client is only 1,000, well, then you naturally increase your true LTV. Now, the reason I'm not a fan of this one, although it does work, the reason this is not my favorite one to do initially is because oftentimes what people will do when they're lowering their cost, they think they have to decrease the quality. And I'm not a fan of this. I'm not a fan of this at all. And then they come to me and they're like, hey, Sergio, my LTV actually went down. And I'm like, yeah, you cut corners. You hired people who were not as talented. You wind up letting go of someone who was a key critical team member inside of your business. That's the main reason why clients stayed with you in the first place. And so this one's the very last one that I would do. And I normally don't recommend it for most businesses. In fact, I believe in overpaying your team members and overpaying to deliver on clients and focusing on the other three. Although again, this one does absolutely work. I've done it and I do recommend. And so just to recap, we went over increasing price. This one is one of my favorites. I recommend everyone do this. We went over upsells. Everyone should absolutely do this one. We went over cross sells. Depending on your business, you should do this. And then the last one is decreasing price. You should do, although I'm not a fan as much as the others. Now, very important caveat. Just because I'm showing you all four of these doesn't mean you have to get all complicated and do all four. I promise you, if you did just two of these, if you only increased your price and you only found a way to upsell clients twice as much as what you charge them on the front end to acquire them for whatever product or service you're selling, you're going to make more money than you even know what to do with, and you're going to take advantage of this crazy bull run that we're on right now. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't do all four if you can. I'm just saying, to keep it simple, pick one. Start by increasing your prices. Start by cross-selling somebody. Start by, if this is the best one for you in your business, start by decreasing the cost of delivery. Now, just to close off this video, because I know it's getting quite long, let me give you a real-time example of a freaking trillion-dollar company that has found a way to effectively do all four of the dimensional walls of LTV. And that company is Apple. Apple, every time a new iPhone comes out, they increase the price ever so slightly. It's like an extra $50, an extra $100. And you just pay it blindly because you're like, hey, I got to get the new iPhone. I can't be that guy or girl that is dealing with the old iPhone that is pretty much the exact same as the new iPhone, but I got to get the new one, right? Number two, they upsell you. Every time that my charger breaks, I'm going to buy a new charger. Every time that I'm on the App Store, they're getting a piece of that subscription business. That's all upsells. Number three, they absolutely cross-sell. You can't get an iPhone and not have a Mac, or you can't get an iPhone and not have an iPad, or you can't get an iPhone and not have the AirPods. Those are all cross-sells. And then last, but definitely not least, they have cheap labor. I think they make their iPhones in China or something. Now, I don't recommend this again, but again, this is the reason why they're a trillion-dollar company. They have found a way to master all four of the dimensional walls inside of LTV. Now, why do I call it the four dimensional walls of LTV? It's because these things begin to compound on itself. If it's just you increasing the price, or you upselling clients, or you decreasing the cost, or you cross-selling clients individually, they work okay. But when you do them all together, it begins to compound synergistically. And that's when you have that hockey stick growth. Hopefully, you got some value out of this video. And if you have any questions whatsoever, drop in the comments and make sure you like and subscribe.